everyone. Welcome to This is Whole Life, where here at the Whole Life Church in Orlando, Florida, we like to talk and discuss topics here, and we'd like you to be involved with those. And always know, as we get together every week, that we would love for you to be a part of that conversation. Maybe you're one of those that watch online, an online family that actually love to fill the comment section full of questions. Sometimes we get to them during the message. Sometimes they're only here at the podcast. Sometimes Randy forgets. It's happened, I know. Shocker. And then other times someone just from random pulls up podcast at wholelife.church and sends us a question, or 407-965-1607. They'll send us a voicemail. I love voicemails. And our last voicemail was from Carolina Dave. So here's looking at you, Carolina Dave. Hoping you're doing well. Haven't heard from you for a moment. See, sometimes we'll even say your name and wish you well if you have added to the conversation, because we know you're listening. That's awesome. So this week at Whole Life, we started Unreasonable Hospitality is a book. And our new series is based off that book. And I'm kind of excited to see where the rest of this goes, because when we read the book as a staff, and we came up with a lot of applications that could be really cool to be that type of unreasonable as a church. But I also don't know. I was looking at sermon titles, and this is something that I like to do, and then I'm not often surprised. I'm usually surprised, because Ken is smarter than me that way. He knows where he's headed, and I don't. So I am thinking, this is where we're going with this. And then
that has nothing to do with smart. It's just knowing where I'm headed. And
well, maybe. But often I don't think of the ways. I'm like, totally. I would. Nope. Had no idea. So this week, as we're thinking about being an unreasonable church, and I was like, maybe this might be the most I've seen Ken smile during a sermon, maybe ever. And I think part of it was, if you've listened for a while, you know that Ken is a foodie. He likes to test out food at different places. But I'll have to say, I was a little surprised at the excitement that was building on Ken's face. I love pizza. And I was in Smithville. You want to know where Smithville is? No, you don't, because you won't know anyway. Nobody knows where Smithville is. And he's like, but you know what they have? They have a Pizza Hut with a buffet. And I was like, really? Ken? I didn't picture Ken as a Pizza Hut guy. But then he explained, you have to drive another hour past this Pizza Hut if you want any other kind of pizza, good, bad, or indifferent. So, and no shade at Pizza Hut. I mean, you may like or not like their pizza, but the buffet. And I'm like, okay, now I see you working. He's headed for the buffet. This is something we can all get behind. And I'm just like, the lead up to salad and pizza time, and then it's literally like any possible scenario where Ken could leave as a moderately happy person is quickly just like gone. Like they just rolled the window down and let it all go out along the road. And Ken's left eating cold pizza, which I am a big proponent of. Any votes? Cold pizza? Yay,
I'm fine with cold pizza under the right
pizza.
circumstances.
I can't.
No. Okay. So, okay.
Yeah, but they do pizza differently in Brazil.
Oh, yeah.
They even eat it with like a fork and stuff. So
Yeah?
I'm not sure it's exactly
What?
the same.
That's how we
It
do
doesn't
it.
sound like pizza.
Whoa, wait. What? Okay, so what's on a pizza that you eat with a fork?
Oh, goodness.
It's just more filling on the pizza.
Okay.
Yeah, it's hard to explain. You have to see it.
There are more acceptable variations of toppings.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know this because we went out to pizza with Wycliffe for his birthday.
Oh, nice.
And so I got to see the vast array of possibilities that could go on a Brazilian pizza.
So you're saying there's a Brazilian pizza place here in town?
Oh,
There is.
there's a
Yep.
bunch, actually.
What?
We have to go.
Did you know
I
this?
did not even know this was a thing.
I
All right,
What?
we're going to have to cut podcast short.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
We're having lunch at a pizza place, Brazilian pizza place.
okay.
You guys, I'm
you
just
learn
saying
something every day.
the educational value of tuning in every week. Did you know?
Has a lot to do with food, doesn't it?
But did you know that I did not? So, okay, I got to find out more about this pizza. But it's like, hey, Pizza Hut. If you're just going for a hot slice and a quick salad and take advantage of the buffet, and just to just have the whole thing like cave in, and I'm like, where's I'm gonna get it wrong. Is it Fu? What was the Thai place that you liked?
Thai Phuket?
Thai Phuket. I knew it was something like that, but I was going to pronounce it wrong, and it didn't sound good. And it's too early in the morning to be worried about that. And then, so I'm thinking, I'm like, wow, what's Ken going to do to redeem, have this redemption story? And it turns out it's another Pizza Hut with a buffet in Nashville.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't like
Madison, to be specific.
Okay.
Yep.
So the redemption story doesn't come from like, well, Lucas told me about this great Brazilian pizza place and it was awesome. And they were like, the service good. So I like how we came to head with like pizza. We put Pizza Hut head to head.
Yeah.
In a cage match.
In second service we did. First service we didn't. So if you were watching first service, if you were at first service, you might be like, what is this?
What
So
happened?
you just have to go watch second service.
And you can tune in to wholelife.church. It's right on the front page. Second service is there for you to enjoy and check out that cage match. When you're listening to this story and you get done chuckling to yourself about how horrible, but then how good it was, and Ken's demeanor just immediately changes. He's like, that lady never had, my cup was never lower than this, and they had this, and they brought pizzas out. She brought me pizzas to go. And
that's my standard of server, by the way.
So
whether how long your cup is empty or whether it just never gets down to empty. That's just so. Anybody ever wondering, now you know.
And if you get to take the pizzas home with you, come on.
Oh, yeah. Off of a buffet, right?
Right. Like, that is stellar.
That is incredible service.
And that to me was like Jesus was shining his face and countenance on you that day, saying, you know what, Ken, I feel you.
Let go. Let go.
What was that?
Let go.
But and I feel like while humorous, I also feel like every so often when you've just had bad, things haven't been going your way, and it's like a little ray of sunshine. It's like I still got you. I feel like Jesus cares about pizza and the buffet just like he does anything else, and but then you really got down to, and this is where I felt like as we getting into the message and people kind of wondering what's unreasonable, what are we talking about when we're talking about reasonable or unreasonable church, and the good type of unreasonable, and the two different churches you went to, and it was just like I could smell the church, the first church, I could see it, I could smell it.
You've been there before, huh?
I think we've all been there at one point or another where it's just like, I am so sorry I ruined your day by coming to your church because I sat in someone's seat apparently, or I used somebody's parking space I didn't know, or it and that feeling was like, I don't like this feeling. And then just like, Madison Pizza Hut comes through in the clutch, you go to the Savannah church.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, I hope when people walk through Whole Life stores that we feel like a Savannah church.
Yeah.
And that helping people get to where they're going. I know sometimes when I have friends that come from out of town, my cousin is here from Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and she stopped by last night and just we were talking about when they visited the church and just differences, and she's like, your church is a little confusing if you're coming from.
It's true.
If you're coming from just like most of us did with your church is only one floor, maybe a basement if you're from up north, but like it's not vertical past that. And to find all the places that something might be for me, and but when Rochelle, and then I really felt Rochelle. I don't know if you listened to the podcast, but we all wept inside a little bit when she's like, "I need the keys."
Yeah.
Like, oh my goodness, can you imagine? Like, even if it was just someone you didn't know, but how would you feel if it was like, oh, that was the past?
I think you should feel worse if it's not the pastor's. I mean,
well,
I think
probably. I suppose
we're gonna go back to church after this is over. But can you just imagine somebody from your neighborhood around your church, walking in and having that experience? I mean, they're not going to come back. They're not going to ever come back. And you hope they could just try to find another church, but they're certainly not going to come back to that church. And I think that's one of the things that I'm realistic enough. I've pastored long enough to know that there are. I'm sure there are people that, who don't have great experiences at whole life. I hope that's not the case, but that's the thing that'll worry me the most out of everything. Is like when people come here, I want them to have, the Savannah experience, not the other experience, the experience where people really warmly meet them, care about them, are looking after them, are paying attention to them, are willing to walk them to a classroom to help them find things rather than pointing and saying, "Hey, it's that way." That's for me. That is because the person who goes to church on a regular basis, that's one thing. But for a person who maybe is just wandering in and they've just they're thinking about whether church is something that they want to have as a part of their life, that's the person I don't want to see ever have a bad experience.
All I could picture was Rochelle, and to the best of my ability, since I didn't know you or your family at that time, was a miniature Kyla and Eric, and just thinking I was like, oh man, but you're right. Just the person that comes and their expectation is probably trepidation and nerves and everything else, and then to have that, who would come back? The Bible text that you went on to talk about, and I put it in all caps because I wanted to make sure I got it right this morning, but you are to be perfect even as your Father in heaven is perfect. Matthew 5:48. And I don't know why. I mean, not that I've never read that verse before, but I don't see too often used in a message.
Oh my goodness!
Is it?
You didn't grow up in my family.
No, no, and it's really weird. And I thought the same thing because I'm like, man, for as much as we were the rules and all the rest of it, and I guess I just haven't seen this text for a long time. But even as your Father in heaven is perfect, and you think about, there's got to be a better meaning to this than just what I think it means in English, right? Because where do you start failing besides not understanding what it means? Because there's no way you can be perfect as the omniscient, the guy that created everything. And when you kind of broke it down a little bit, and it seems unreasonable. But tell me about this. What did you say? The meat maturity. I'm not sure I pulled all that together.
Sure. So the original language that was written in is Greek, and the word that's used there for perfect can have several different nuances to it. One of them could be you could have say it reach maturity as your Father in heaven. So it's this completion. It's this ongoing act of completion, of being complete. And so most and scholars look at that. Melanie, you might be able to break it down a little bit further. But this is one of those texts that has often been used in some churches to really try to create a sense of perfectionism, and you have to achieve complete and utter sinlessness because that's what your Father in heaven has, and failure to do so could mean failure. In those circumstances, they'll say, if you don't do this, then you can't be in heaven if you don't achieve perfection. And occasionally you'll run into somebody who is very proud that they have already reached perfection and that they are no longer sinning. This is problematic. It happens within the Seventh Adventist Church. It's problematic because that's not the theology of the founders of our church. It's not the theology of Ellen White. And so, but nevertheless, people will jump on this text and kind of take that to mean, well, I must become perfect. And what I was really trying to point out in the sermon was that God is love, and perfect love is what we strive and wish to attain, where we actually love and care about. And when I talk about love, I'm talking about 1 Corinthians 13. You got it. I always am going to go back there because I think sometimes we get a little confused about what love is. We kind of start getting a little confused about just romantic love or whatever. But in this particular case, when we're talking about love, we're talking about the word agape from the Greek language, which is a selfless love. And so when we start talking about what God is selfless love, and God wishes us to be the same. He wishes us to be selfless. Does that mean that we're going to achieve that? Well, it means that we need to have God living in us. We talked about the Holy Spirit living in us in a sermon earlier this year, and that really is key, is to having God in you. If you want to be perfect as your Father in heaven is, you need to have Christ in you, living and working through you.
You said
Melanie, do you want to jump on that at all?
Sure. Yeah. Sometimes when we translate words from other languages into English, it requires that we simplify it a little bit too much because the word doesn't quite mean the same thing one to one. But Aristotle actually used this word in his writings, and the way that, and I'm going to completely simplify it again just because there's a whole lot on this. But the idea was that everything is created with a purpose, or the purpose is inherent. And the idea of this word, telos or teleos, is to grow into and fulfill the purpose for which you were created. So someone who is moving toward perfection would be leaning into and fulfilling what they were created to do or be.
So, okay. Man, that's still a... Sorry.
Randy's like, all
Taking a
right,
minute
great.
to
Glad
process.
Melanie
No,
talked.
no. No, I mean, I'm processing this in the way that, I mean, I like that. That sounds very beautiful. Like you are trying to, you're working towards, you're on this journey to become what God created you to be. But perfection just seems unattainable. It's like, well, if that's the bar, and if it's just what He created me to be.
So how would it feel if you said it rather than saying it that way? How would it feel if you heard it said, but you are to reach the purpose for which you were created, which is to be like your Father in heaven?
I mean, it's better. But
Randy's like, the bar lowered just a little bit.
This is why I was trying to figure out, as I've listened to the message a couple times, and I was just trying to put this into my mind in a way where I don't. And maybe it's just because the ideas around perfection and sin and how we like to put a certain value on certain sins, and maybe someone is better than another, and where do I fit into this? And I know that because of sin, I mean, I can't be what God really designed me for.
I think one of the
right?
Yeah, I think one of the difficulties is we think of perfection as completion. Like we've arrived, we've achieved it, we've done it. And I think what maybe gets missed a little bit in the translation is the process piece. There's a little bit more process involved in the Greek word than there is in the English word.
So meaning it really is
movement.
Movement. Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. So not something necessarily that you're going to, it just, well, maybe a guide. This is where we're headed. This is, I mean, because it's hard to even think about some of the pieces of God that I don't understand. Like He's always been here. He's always will be here. Time doesn't mean anything. And it's like perfection. I'm like, well, then there's a lot happening there. But I guess if it's a movement, maybe a journey, a path that you're on, that you're seeking, that helps. That helps. But that's still when definitely when you Ken's like one's unreasonable and one's the good unreasonable.
Well, if it were possible, if it were achievable, it was something that if we could nail, then it wouldn't be unreasonable, and it wouldn't
True.
be. It would be human sized, not God sized. So I think that's
Ooh.
also part of the piece that you
There you
can't
go.
really do it.
Thank you. Okay, I like that. That helps.
I think it's really important to think about all the things that come before that verse in Matthew chapter 5.
Okay.
Jesus talks about a lot of things that are God-sized.
Okay.
Forgiveness,
Oh.
loving your enemies.
Yeah.
Talks about if you're angry with somebody, it's the same as murdering them. These are big concept things. These are, and yet Jesus is basically saying, look, if you want to be like God, that's what that looks like. And so at the end, he finishes off, so strive for these things because that's who your Father is, and that's what he desires for you, and make this a process that's happening.
Well, the type A in all of us has to be like, well, yeah, let's put that one up on the list and see how we do.
I used to try every January 1 when I was a kid. I was like, this is going to be the year.
That I
This is going to
don't.
be the year that I don't sin.
Wow. Which year did that happen? Was that
I was gonna say,
1993 or 1994?
It happened basically for about the first 10 minutes of every year.
Oh, okay.
I
I always thought you were going to say
perfect.
the first 10 days of every year. I was going to be
10
pretty
minutes,
impressed
that's
with
No,
that.
it pretty much lasted until I got to the breakfast table and was hanging out with my brother. He was. I love you, my brother. He was a thorn in my flesh that caused me to sin.
oh man,
I could have been perfect.
So I hear Kyle listening to this right now and really resonating with you.
there's words being thought. Yeah, no. Well, I mean, I think that's helpful in a way that sometimes the idea of overall, I feel like, hey, I'm a pretty good person. God and I have talked through, everything. He knows everything. We're working on some things in my life, but man, there's still A, B, or C or whatever that just why in the world? And it almost thinking of it in this way helps it not feel maybe a little, maybe not so much maybe not so heavy as it initially feels when. It just feels like, man, life is hard enough. Do I have to bring expectations that I know I will never achieve in this lifetime into this?
Well, think of it this way. Think of it when Ellie was learning to walk, and you were like, the standard is marathon, right?
Yeah.
And
What took her so
there's no
long?
way that she could do marathon, but she's learning to use her little legs, and she's taking little steps, and then pretty soon she can walk unassisted, and then pretty soon she can run, and then pretty soon maybe she starts training. So yeah, sure, the standard is marathon, but if her little, if she's using her legs the way that she's able to use them, then that's the purpose for which they were created. Just
That everything's working.
that everything's working.
Yeah,
just
yeah.
that piece.
No,
Thanks.
and there was only one trip to the ER for plastic surgery to sew up that eye that Dad was supposed to be taking care of. So
Right, and
I
that's
think it went okay.
Part
overall.
of the process.
Yeah, that was pretty good. So, the other part, prodigal, you had, I think it was just a slide that said prodigal equals wastefully extravagant.
Yeah.
And man, that's the other one where I'm like, okay, now that we've talked through this, it's your little journey to be, as perfect as we can be and all that good stuff. But wastefully extravagant, it makes it feel like that statement then becomes more of, I'm here to pick you up. I'm here to walk this with you, and it makes it feel like we're doing it together. And that was an emotional moment for me just thinking about that, because we're probably all our own worst enemies, thinking about, well, there you did, this didn't work out, that didn't work out. But it really felt like kind of understanding that, and I think I've heard that before, but even if it was, it was just really, really, it really hit home for me during the message. And you followed that with, you said, we have to decide how to stand up when injustice is happening. God wants us to love people in such a way that even when we stand up, and this was the key part, they can't doubt that we care about them, that they are loved, even when we say, no, that's not okay. Oh, man. And then I'm like, well, okay, let's think about, like, that's almost as unreasonable as, but you are to be perfect even as you're.
But that's exactly it. But that is the unreasonable part of it, because that is God's perfection, that within God saying that's not okay, there is still love for us.
But that's hard to model, any long-term relationship, even short-term sometimes. But thinking about, look back at, if I look back at my marriage and go, if I had 5 moments to do different, what would those 5 moments, what would they be? And I think about those and just how you can't doubt that we can. That is like that one right there. Like, you can't doubt. Like, maybe that needs to be our mission statement. You'll never doubt that we care about you. But can we live up to that as a church?
That would probably be more of a vision statement. You'll never doubt that we love you. That would be very. That would be.
Maybe I've been hanging out with you on Sunday too.
Yeah,
much
a lot. Yeah,
I think is what the problem is.
Missed you this Sunday, by the way.
Did we have one this Sunday? Really?
We were all coffeeless.
Oh.
Yeah, we were devastated.
Guys, here's
I'm not saying that's what they missed most about you not being there, but it is what Melanie brought up first. So
here, this is that was a long silver sword, and this is Randy falling on it, and all the way through, because it wasn't in my calendar, and I was like, wow, when are we going back? And I thought about it, but then that was on Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah.
Was it really? You guys are messing with me.
No.
Nope.
And the other part,
it's incredible the things that happen on podcasts.
Right?
It's like we just
because the other part is, it's like,
and he's like, I did not achieve perfection on this.
No. And the worst part is like we're at a spot where you don't want to not be there, because you've done all the work to get to that point. You want to be there to help push it over the line and get.
I think that probably was our last one too, Randy.
Wow.
Are you kidding? I thought we had like 2 or 3 more.
No, I think that's it.
Now he's messing with me.
As far as the big gatherings go, I think
really
it's going to go down to smaller work groups.
I feel pretty good that I only missed 2, I think.
Melanie has the championship, though. She didn't miss a single one.
You didn't miss any?
I didn't miss any.
Not a one.
Jim and I were the ones that didn't miss any, like the leader.
It was kind of important. My dad and my brother came during one of them, and so I think that was the wow. Well, we're gonna have to stay late this week and write on the whiteboard sentences, I think. I'll let you choose what the sentences are and how many I have to teach.
Please let me.
I think it has more to do with making coffee for people, probably.
Yeah.
As soon as we're done recording, I guess I better make coffee. Goodness gracious!
Gonna open a coffee shop here.
That's right.
Well, the thing that I thought about at the end was listening to, like, wow, how good does it feel to consider the good unreasonable? And like you said, it allows the world to be changed, and it's really so true. But model, not mandate. And I'm like, boy, we hear a lot over the last probably 8 years. I think that term has gotten in politics has gotten so popular. We're just going to mandate things, and that's when people are like, you're kind of tuning me out there, bro. I'm trying to get you back, but it's just fuzz on the TV screen. And to model it, not mandate. So my only question there was, okay, if we're kind of on this journey, as we just talked about, man, when do I start modeling? Because I'm worried if I start modeling now, it's going to feel like a lot like a mandate, and it's not going to look a lot like a model, because I'm probably not very good at it. And
you shouldn't start until you're really good at it.
Wait. What is your advice?
You can't get good at it until you're doing it.
You got to practice.
That's a tough one, though, for people that don't like to just, jump in and be like, oh, you didn't show up on Sunday. There's a model, but I absolutely love model, not mandate. That just that feels good. That feels like something you can say, yeah, I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I'm just, let what you do be the words. Oh man, there's a lot to work with here, guys. And I didn't sleep. Like Saturday night, I didn't sleep, and honestly, the message bugged me to the point of,
Yay.
In a good way. No, but in a good way. We went kayaking in the afternoon. Ellie was home, had a nice time, and just together, family time, out, nature, sun, everything. And it's really all I thought about all afternoon. And I can't tell you what the dream was because I don't remember, but I just remember waking up terrified. So and all day yesterday, this is what I've been thinking about. And things are so, like, in our world all around, there's like so many places that you can get an overload. You can get the buffet anywhere on all of the things that are mandates or things that sound bad or people trying to move you from one place to another. But how much do you see modeling of what things that make things attractive to you? Like, who's modeling a way to have a presence on social media that, if there is such a thing anymore, I'm not even sure. Can you model someone there that isn't offensive to someone or to something, or can we model just being quote unquote normal human beings? And I often wonder about it because sometimes the responses that people get to seemingly innocuous things it's just like we're so divided. And I'm just like, where does modeling, like, can you think of someone that's modeling something really awesome that you'd like to be a part of because of the way that they're modeling it?
Absolutely.
Good. You want to share it, or could you?
Well, I'll just call out one of the families in our churches, the Mitsources.
Okay, nice.
They inspire me to volunteer. They are always, if there is something that's happening, and it's not just for our church stuff, there's other things that in this community that they participate in. And I see they have a large family. They've got a lot going on in their life, and yet they always find the time to be of service and to help. And to me, it'd be one thing for, it'd be one thing. It's one thing, like, just imagine if somebody gets up front and says, you need to volunteer. That's okay. But it's another thing when you watch somebody who is selflessly giving of themselves. And I hate to, and there's so many in our church, but you asked for one example. That's one.
No.
And I just watched them, the way that they selflessly give of themselves, and it's inspirational to me. It models, it's far more impactful on me than having somebody get up front and saying, hey, you need to do this.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, if they can figure out, I need to be figuring out these kind of things as well. I need to be giving of myself like that. And it's something that's that really is inspirational. And again, within our church, an unreasonable church that, rather than going around telling people you need to be loving, is loving.
Yeah, it just is.
That says, hey, you need to help those in need, but it actually is helping those in need. Hey, you need to be kind to everyone, but is being kind to everyone. That's the kind of inspiration that I believe God smiles on. When God wanted us to understand, there's a lot of mandates in the Old Testament, and I think that Christ is the model in the New Testament of what God meant with those mandates that he put out to his people, and they were put out to his called people that were to be his role model, and he puts those out, by the way, for them so that they could be a model to the rest of the world of what it looks like to do things God's way, and why it would be a better way of doing things. And so anyway, but Christ comes and models for us what it looks like. He puts out guidelines, he shares things, but he models. And as a Christian church, I think that the concern I see, the concern I have throughout millennia of Christians is that there's been a lot of talk. It's been a lot of the Jesus words about pointing out the speck in your brother's eye while there's a log in your own. And I think that spending more time in the mirror of Christ in my own life and less time trying to point out in your life what's going wrong, and then in my own life trying to behave the way I believe God is calling me to behave, I think to me that's where it's at. It's where it's at. And so I hope that that's something that whole life can do. And I think it's unreasonable. I think it's an unreasonable thing to do, to think that you're going to go ahead and achieve God levels of love. And yet I hear Jesus calling me to it.
Yeah, but even if you don't make it, but you get pretty close, that would be a pretty good love.
Dude,
sounding.
if you got halfway there,
Right.
halfway towards God's love, you would be doing
people would
so good.
They would notice. Yeah, there would be no choice but to notice.
But the point is to always be moving in that direction.
Right.
I think
Staying
if,
with that,
if there was an achievable, we would get to the achievable and then we'd quit. But that's the point of having something on the horizon that you can never quite get to, is because we have to keep going.
And that is the real, and thank you for saying that, because to me that is the real terrifying part of people who think that they can achieve perfection. Every single person who's ever told me, "Oh, I've achieved perfection. I only rarely sin, or I never sin." Every single one of them, I can look at and be like, "Oh, trust me, you haven't got there." But they think they have, and so now they're not trying to grow. They're not trying anymore because they've already reached it. There's nothing else to do. Everybody around them knows there's a lot more to do, but not them.
Wow.
And so, for me, I hope that as long as I live, should God somehow figure out how to help me reach perfection, I hope that I wouldn't know it and that I keep on trying to be a better, more loving, more kind, more like God every day that goes by.
Wow. Yeah. No. I mean, I've never met anybody that. Maybe I'm hanging out in the wrong circles.
Hey now.
Or maybe it's in the right circles.
Maybe not today. No, not speaking. Oh man. All right.
Yeah.
Lucas, I thought we had some questions from the chat, didn't we?
Yeah, nice transition. I think one of the questions can actually answer that in the first service, but here we go. Matthew asked, is there any repercussions for being an unreasonable church?
Yeah, people love to. When you have high standards for yourself, people hold you to those high standards. At Indian Creek Camp, it was interesting to me. We took so many aspects of that camp and really worked to improve our processes and do things. So, for instance, when people were registering, I think my first summer it took them 2 to 3 hours to get through registration, and that not good. That was really not good. And so we really refined it over the next couple of years and got it down to where it was about 20 to 30 minutes to get in and out. And yet people would then, if it was 25 minutes, it was like, wow, this wasn't as quick as last year. So the repercussions are, as you are being unreasonable, people become unreasonable too with the expectations of you. And that is one of the things that we have to understand, that as Christians, when we talk about love, when we talk about being kind, when we talk about being an unreasonable church, and we're going to talk about hospitality this next week. When we talk about those things, people suddenly go, "But I expect more out of you." And when you don't do it, people notice. That's not it's a repercussion.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'd prefer to have that one than to be the church where there's like, well, no expectation, because they're not pleasant, they're not nice. I already know that.
I don't.
Standard met.
That's the Sesame Street where the guy goes to Grover and he's always his waiter and he's like, I don't know why I keep coming back to this restaurant every single time. I know what I'm getting. It's horrible. That's just sorry. That was a Randy. Edit that out. What is going
no,
on?
don't. Hold on to that one.
Maybe I can find a clip and I'll put it in the Discord. It is. But seriously, like, does a fly in my soup? And then okay. Anyway.
All right.
Lucas, keep us going, please.
Yeah, the last one that we have here is not a question, it's more a comment. How different would our world be if we all sent nice tweets for a change?
If we all what?
Sent nice tweets for a change.
Wasn't so okay. We have to talk about that. This was the highlight of church for me this last week, was the kind tweets from God, and just kudos to Randy and to Lucas and to Melanie for making that happen. It was so cool, and I watched it 3 times on Sabbath morning, and I cried all 3 times. It was so meaningful and impactful. And I think that for those of you who did not hear the story behind it, Jimmy Kimmel does a bit in his late night show that he calls Mean Tweets, and he has celebrities read tweets cold. They've never seen the tweet before, but it's a mean tweet. It's this nasty stuff that people write about. Well, about everything, but celebrities especially. Yeah. And so he has them read it live, and sometimes the celebrities think it's funny, or at least they act like they think it's funny, and sometimes you can tell they just visibly get really upset. Yeah. And we thought, how cool would it be to do kind tweets from God, and we have people read a kind tweet from God to them. This is something our worship committee,
visioning committee,
worship visioning committee came up with, and then Randy, Lucas, and Melanie made it happen. They wrote out these tweets ahead of time. They didn't actually know who the tweet was going to go to, and I think that's really key, because I watched and I was like, oh, it was like those tweets were custom written for the people that they went to. And but these tweets were written ahead of time, and then Randy and Lucas actually fit the name of the person who they were doing the interview into it. So there was probably a little bit of selection that happened there, but these tweets were all written ahead of time.
Well, and I have to say, there's one clarification that I need to make, because I think I wasn't clear entirely with Gabby. She'd asked me a question, and I answered it, but not fully, because Melanie said she didn't know the chaplains and never met them before. Actually, what she had asked me was, or what she had asked me something, and my response was, I didn't know who the tweets were going to. Oh. Yeah. So that's my fault for not being entirely clear. But I did have a couple of chaplains come up to me afterward and facetiously introduce themselves to me. So apologies. Well, that's not what I meant, actually.
Gustavo, who is a member here, and he works over at East Orlando, and he sent me a text afterwards and said, man, they came out perfect.
Oh, it's so good.
And so, of course, we knew Gustavo. We know Tati. And I know...
But you did not write the tweet that went to them was not written with... Specifically Tati or Gustavo or Nate or...
But I will tell you that the one that was written for Edwin... Yeah. I've known Edwin... 22, 23 years. And when I saw that, so basically what I did was I put him in notes on my phone. Yeah. And then I'd copied and pasted him over so we could just go. And then for each person, I've never met Nahimi before, and I had not met Wendy before. So those were the only 2 that I didn't know. But also it was like, well, man, who am I going to give these to? And we were some of them started with their name, and I'm like, well, I don't want too many to be, because we had each person read 3, which everyone didn't know. And so, but honestly, the only ones that I knew for sure was the one the 3 we chose for Toddy, and the one that I chose for Nate, because we know he loves coffee. And we had one other person that we knew, but when we took the best from each, and it was really powerful. It was
really good.
That was
so good.
Yeah, that was.
And those chaplains so deserve it. They're such givers. They give so much of their heart to their.
Yeah, that's a great team.
It is.
Advent Health chaplains.
Did we miss Tony in the final video?
He wasn't in the final video. Did you actually record him?
We did. I just thought of it now. We somehow missed Tony.
Well,
Randy
we're
is-
gonna have to have some social
Well,
media posts.
we went 3 minutes, and I was like, okay, everyone, 6 people. How did we get an extra person that we weren't counting on? Wow. Well, it turned out great, and so we'll put together.
Maybe we should put as a bonus on our social media Tony's.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's coming. It's,
Yeah, we'll definitely, if you weren't here and you haven't watched the message or saw what we didn't worship with us this past Sabbath, you will see it on social media. It'll be links going out to our.
But you'll put an
YouTube
extra
channel.
one of Tony, right?
Oh yeah. Well,
So,
before
yeah.
that goes out, we'll make sure that Tony's
Tony's amazing.
because Tony's a member here as well. And I was just thinking through it, and I'm like, man, how in the world did we not think about and not see him? Because we did his out in the garden.
Yep.
It was really beautiful. All right, Tony, I will apologize to you personally now. I don't know how that happened. We got to 3 minutes. I was like, well, I'm done. Because those were the 3 minutes I was allotted by the worship pastor. And so now.
Worship pastor would have given you an extra 30 seconds.
Oh wow, she just really.
Wow.
She didn't run you over. She just backed up.
But would she? No,
We'll never know.
No, we will never know. Wow, it's been a rough week in Randyville. Apparently, I really was like, man, this week came off so well. We had a busy week, and we made all of our appointments, made all of our deadlines.
Well,
we got
most of
things
them.
scheduled. Well, I was thinking I made all of them, and so it's just, I think before staff meeting comes, I feel bad. I think I'm gonna go home. I'm warm. I don't know what's waiting for me at
Going to
staff.
add to your sins, huh?
Something's gonna happen at staff meeting. I'm sure of it. So
Reach perfection. Reach perfection.
I better
Keep growing. Keep striving.
I am not moving nearly fast enough, is what I can tell you now. All right, guys. Before we let you go, we had an email from last week's message on February the 1st, and this was our kickoff to Black History Month with Angeline Brady, our Justice Ministries Director here at Whole Life, who brought a sermon about the Good Samaritan. Which, and if you haven't heard the podcast, please go back and listen to it. I don't know who shared it, but it hit a ton of people right off the bat, and it's been shared a bunch because it was a really good conversation, and we had a good time. And Angeline's always fun to have on the podcast. So. From Vicky, she said, for many of us whose hearts were feeling heavy for the horrible victims of the airline crashes that took the lives of so many talented athletes, their parents, coaches, along with the medical flight, with their health providers, and a pediatric PT returning to Mexico, we heard nothing mentioned or prayers for them on their behalf. Why? The sermon had many great points shared about compassion with regard to the Good Samaritan, but the political tone was not missed. So these are my questions to consider. Is immigration lumped all together? Refugees, legal and illegal? Could the real issues be the need for immigration reform and open borders? How do we show mercy and justice to those affected by drug cartels, human traffickers, and other crimes that exploit the marginalized and citizens alike? While I rejoice for the speaker's immigration story from Haiti, I must wonder, without proper immigration vetting and laws, are we able to stay strong and a safe nation to be able to meet the world's humanitarian needs? Bringing it closer to home, do you think the citizens of North Carolina and eastern Tennessee felt compassion, justice, and mercy as their desperate situations were finally recognized and addressed along with the citizens in the California fires? Lastly, what about the unborn child who has no voice? Where is their justice and mercy? Politics aside, I pray to keep our hearts open to all peoples and situations that God will use each of us to show compassion in our world.
Oh, well, there's a lot there, but let me just first of all the prayer for the victims of that plane crash. That was an oversight on our part. I think the difficult thing, every week as we think about prayer and what we need to focus on, there are things that we pray for in our staff meetings. There are things that we pray for sometimes corporately in worship. And I think one of the challenges is there are so many things that happen in our world that deserve our prayers and that deserve our thoughts and our money. And so sometimes remembering and corporately as a church, those some things can get left out, and that's I apologize that was one of them, because our hearts really were heavy for the victims of that crash and the families.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. And good point. So definitely not intentional. I that is one of the things that we wrestle with. I think that there's probably, I would suspect, and I don't know if this is the case for Vicky, but I could suspect that sometimes it's easy to read into what is mentioned and what isn't mentioned and try to think about, well, is that because, we care about this more than we care about that, or,
Sure.
maybe the church skews a certain way versus another certain way. And I hope that what our listeners and our church members would know is that I'm sure we do skew ways. Sometimes we can be a little bit blind to our own biases and things like that, but we try not to. We really try to really genuinely have a heart for the world around us and to not leave those sort of things out. And so I just ask you to do what Brene Brown suggests, which is the assumption of good intent. That sometimes when we fail, it was not because of a bias or anything else. It was just maybe it was a busy week, maybe there was a lot going on, and or whatever.
Or Randy missed the meeting on Sunday because that
can happen too. Vicky, you also asked a lot of other questions, and so here's what I want to say. There were a lot of questions in there that have in fact, I would say all the questions after that had a heavy political implications to them, and rightfully so. The church needs to speak out on some of these things. On other things, it is a policy issue that the United States gets to grapple with as a country and decide on some of these things. I think when we start talking about immigration, I personally believe the United States has every right to make the decisions it wants to when it comes to immigration. As an American citizen, I have a right to have an opinion on what those political decisions should be when it comes to borders, and there are a lot of very good people within Whole Life who have a lot of different viewpoints on it. I think one of the things that has impacted me is having some really wonderful people that are very close to me that came to the United States legally and then loved it so much that they wanted to stay. And we loved them so much we wanted them to stay. And then they struggled to be able to come through the legal channels after the visas. And I think that hit me really hard, in particular a number of years ago when I had somebody that I just wanted to legally was working for us, but we were wondering whether they were going to be able to remain legally working for us because their visas were running out. We were trying to jump through the hoops, and you see what a wonderful addition to the American family this person would be. And so, again, I think that one of the things we have to do in particular with immigration is separate the political aspect and the part where the United States gets to be a sovereign nation and make its laws and have its rules regarding immigration from the fact that we're Christians and Christ is first. Christ is above country. And if you don't agree with that, I don't know what to say to you. But Christ is above country. And that means that if somebody is here illegally and they are my brother or sister in Christ, the United States government may need to do what it needs to do, but it does not take away from the fact that they are a human being created in God's image that I need to love and care about and be merciful to and treat with dignity and respect. And I think that what concerns me, Ken Wetmore, personally, is some of the rhetoric that goes around this discussion right now where we are dehumanizing people. And again, this is not about whether they should have, whether they came here and broke laws or anything like that. You know, if somebody is starving and steals a loaf of bread off the shelf in a grocery store, they should not have done that. They should not have done that. It's a crime. It's stealing. It's taking from someone else. And yet, if you don't have compassion for that person that's starving, how do you not have compassion? And what do you do as a society to say, well, this person's starving, they shouldn't have done it. There may need to even be consequences for it. But you know that old worn out story about a judge who had a situation like this, and he sentenced the person, but then he sentenced everybody in the courtroom, fined every person in the courtroom for allowing somebody to be hungry in his county like that. And that's the part where, when we talk about immigration, I see people who are desperately looking for a better place. Should they break the law to do it? I don't believe they should. And yet I also understand what I can put myself in their shoes and feel the desperation to have a better life for my kids, to have a better life for the people I care about. And so that's the part that I would just like to see inserted into it. Not to say, well, because everybody, that the United States has to take everyone or whatever, but just to say these are human beings created in God's image that we love and that we care about. And that as a church, the United States government needs to do what it needs to do, and yet I need to go ahead and love and care for and provide and take care of the people that are in my radius to do so for. And so I know it's a nuanced discussion. I know it's a long one. And again, the political side of the debate is who's eligible to come in? What does that look like? Does there need to be immigration reform? That's all political. What isn't political, in my opinion, is God's command to feed the hungry, to clothe the naked. And it's not the naked of your country. It's not the naked that have the same citizenship as you. It is visit those in prison, implying that people in prison who have broken laws are still worthy of humanity. And so that's the part that concerns me, Ken Wetmore, about the conversation that's happening around the United States, is the dehumanizing of people. It's not about whether or not the United States has a right to enforce its laws, to have borders, so on and so forth. That's not the part that concerns me nearly as much as when we start taking people and treating them like cattle, like as if they don't have the same worth as a person that I have. And that's, to me, again, that prodigal love that we're talking about. It's the unreasonable church idea. And again, I hope that people can understand the nuance in this, because this isn't an easy topic. And
No.
I think that there are really complex issues here at play. Vicki asked about North Carolina and Tennessee. Again, the media's made a lot out of this particular conversation on all sides of things. This is personal to me. I grew up in some of the most, Chimney Rock that kind of ceased to exist. I grew up 20 minutes up the road. We go there often.
I love Chimney
the town
Rock.
that
I've
I
gotten to
grew
love
up
it.
in. My parents lost property during this. My family has been super impacted by this particular event that happened. And so for all the people in Western North Carolina and Eastern Tennessee that were hurt with this, not only does my heart go out, I know them. These are neighbors, friends, and people I grew up with. And when this event happened, I called up the pastor of the Fletcher Church who was a friend I went to college with. It happens to be the same church that my family attends, and said, "Hey, how can Whole Life help?" And he said, contributing money right now is probably what's most needed. And we, right now it's so chaotic up here. Getting more people into this area probably isn't what's best. And so we're looking at maybe doing something in the next couple months, for that. And again, it's one of the things on my to-do list of looking at. But the point is, for me, that one hits home. The California fires probably hit home a little less for me, because I didn't grow up in LA. I don't know that area particularly well, and yet I can imagine what it would be like to have fires come through and take out our homes. And so I guess I will say that I am very thankful that the people in my life in North Carolina that I know were very well taken care of after the storm. there were supplies, there were things that came in and that were there for them. Was that the case for everybody? Maybe not. But the people I know had a lot of assistance and help that was sent their way. I said that, with my parents, FEMA came through for them, and so did their insurance when it came to the property loss that they experienced. So I'm grateful for that. Again, that's one story. I'm sure there's many others that didn't have that. But I think, again, what I would hope is we start talking about justice, and another, abortion was brought up. Again, another very complex topic. Very complex. We could pretty much every single one of those we could probably spend a year of podcasts discussing, and people would have different opinions no matter what we say. People feel strongly on these topics, as you should.
Sure.
Study them, pray about them, advocate. But in all of it, one of the things I would just ask is be kind.
Yeah.
Be kind. Recognize that people who have a different opinion than you aren't the enemy. They're just another human being created in God's image that has a different opinion from you. And be kind. And so I just hope that for all of us out there, because that we can stop looking at each other as enemies and find love and compassion. That doesn't mean that we don't strongly object to certain things and strongly stand up for what we believe in. It doesn't mean that we don't call out evil when we see it. But as much as we can, I prefer to call out the evil rather than the person, if that makes sense. Yeah. And so that's one of the things I would say. So I will just say I am so grateful. I'm so grateful that Anderline is a part of our whole life team. So grateful that the immigration things worked out so that she could be an American citizen. She could make the impact not only on whole life but on the Orlando community that she's making. She is a terrific human being, and there's so many terrific immigrants out there that I think that we sometimes miss out on that. And so just kudos to Anderline for a great sermon 2 weeks ago. It was nice to have that Sabbath off, and grateful to hear her perspective as she was sharing with us. And that's one of the reasons why we do Black History Month, so that we can hear other perspectives. And some of those perspectives I find are the perspectives I need to hear most are the people who have the most different perspective from me. Not so I can debate them, but so I can start trying to understand and go, okay, so that's where you're coming from. That's why you see the world this way. Okay, I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, well, that changes my perspective. And sometimes I think, well, no, it doesn't change my perspective, but I see you as a human being more now. I understand the things that are going on in your heart. And so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that, as we go through Black History Month every year, obviously justice has to be a part of the conversation that we're having. And I thought that the Anderline's story, and just when you know her and you get a chance to just take off the knowledge and the things that she's experienced, and her viewpoint, whether you agree or not, is always done with a smile, and it's always done with that love that we're looking for. And so I appreciate her a ton here on staff, and just to be able to call her a friend.
Absolutely.
What does next week look like? I think you mentioned it earlier.
It's just, we are actually doing the title of the book that this was based off of, Unreasonable Hospitality. We're talking about what a church that practiced unreasonable hospitality would look like. So last week was Unreasonable Love. This year, it was Prodigal Love. So wastefully, extravagant love. Next week, we're talking about unreasonable hospitality as a church.
So that looks like what, a full-time world-class barista on staff, just for staff, and of course for
Just for
I mean, I meant that for
Randy, come to church this Sabbath. Come to church this
during
Sabbath.
the week. I meant, and it's, wow, never mind. You guys can have coffee too. You can have all the good stuff. That's fine.
You can have mine.
I'm not trying to steal it. I promise. Or hoard
Wow,
it.
that was really selfless of you, for someone who doesn't drink coffee.
I want all the Fouquet guy stuff.
Okay,
Aw,
you can have that.
look at Kate. He's like, because she'll make more for me too.
Yeah, exactly. Pat will take care of me.
Pat, that's right. All right, well, guys, that's going to do it for this week. Tune in next week. I'm really looking forward to the rest of this series. The book was fantastic, and this week started it off in a great way. So make sure you come back for next week. But in the meantime, be kind. Go love your world. Maybe that's a good way to end today.
Do it. Go love your world.
Go love your world.